what's the point,
Mm.
period? And I thought, that sucks. And, for me, suicide was not going to be an option because I had just seen my dad attempt it when I was 11. And I knew I wasn't going to put anybody through that. And I wasn't going to put myself through that. It just made me realize there is a different way. And I don't have to follow this darker, gloomier path that my cousins and my uncles seem to be following. What if I drew a line in the sand and said, I'm going to be the first in my family to go to college. I'm going to be the first in my family to have even my own grandparents, though, they were married 50 plus years before they passed away. And I was like, I want to be like them. I would say our life here on this earth is just way too short to live it stuck in a rut. And on top of that, if we're truly worshiping a God who's abundant, who restores us and reconnects us to Him, then it's up to us to live intentionally as well.
Many people go through life aiming at nothing and hitting it with amazing accuracy. Your chances of pursuing and achieving your dreams without losing your faith, your family, or your health go up when you have written goals and parameters for achieving these goals. But if you're like many people, writing goals and creating a plan just seems like too much work. After years of reacting to life instead of creating it, you're going to find yourself in a rut. Well, no more, because today my guest has a plan to help you get rid of your rut. Now, in the meantime, if you're really interested in raising the standards as a father, husband, and entrepreneur, I encourage you to participate in our Band of Brothers group mentorship program. We're a group of ordinary guys working towards living extraordinary lives. And you can find us at the Awakened Man Training Academy at members.theawakenedman.net. And with that, let's get on with today's episode.
The average man today is sleepwalking through life, many never reaching their true potential, let alone ever crossing the finish line to living a purposeful life. Yet, the hunger still exists, albeit buried amidst his cluttered mind, misguided beliefs, and values that no longer serve him. It's time to align yourself for greatness. It's time to become a revolutionary man. Stay strong, my brother.
Welcome, everyone, to the Revolutionary Man podcast. I'm the founder of the Awakened Man movement and your host, Alan DeMonso. Before we get into anything today, I'd just like to ask a couple of questions. Would you consider your life being in a rut? And how about maybe not all of it, but are there parts of it that are in a rut? There's a saying that the difference between a rut and a grave is that a grave has the ends kicked out of it, right? Sometimes our lives can feel like it is dead on arrival, but it doesn't have to be that way. Yes, it takes some work and, of course, some responsibility. And the effort is worth it, isn't it? And I think so. So today, my guest is going to show how he got out of his rut and create a system for anyone else to do the same. Allow me to introduce my guest. Jerry Dugan is a CEO and senior consultant for BTR Impact LLC, and that's a consulting and training company focused on helping leaders to find success on their terms so they can live fulfilled, meaningful lives with impact and not lose their faith, their family, or their health. Now, since 2015, Jerry has been a host and producer of Beyond the Rut podcast, a show that shares encouraging stories and practical advice to help pull listeners out of their ruts and live into lives worth living. It's not enough just to get out of rut. He wants you to live way beyond it. Welcome to the show, Jerry. How are things, my brother?
Oh, man. Alan, thank you. That was like officially the coolest intro I've ever had as a guest on a show. I'm like, wow, this guy's pretty cool. I'm like, oh, he's talking about me. So, well, thank you. Took me a moment.
I got to tell you, I really enjoyed, getting prepared for this show today and looking at the work that you're doing. And it's such valuable work. And I just think it's just so amazing. And, in my work here with the Awakened Man, we always talk about all of us being in our own hero's journey or our hero's quest, as we call it. And, getting in a rut can be part of that hero's journey. So now that I've said that, now how about your story? And tell us a little bit about a particular time in your life when you were challenged and maybe you felt lost and knew things had to change. What did you do? And how did that experience shape who you are, who you are today, and the work that you're doing?
Oh, man. So there have been a number of times in my life where I felt stuck in life or that maybe there isn't anything better ahead of me. It started at a young age when I was 11 and my parents divorced, kind of got picked on a little bit by my extended family, called half breed, gook, boat person. It was just like lots of rejection from the family that should have taken me in and helped me heal through a tough time. And at some point, by the time I was 14, just kind of looked up and realized these folks have no hope for their own lives either. My cousins, some of my uncles who were going through divorce, and they just thought, what's the point of school? What's the point of having healthy relationships? What's the point?
Mm.
Period. And I thought, that sucks. And, for me, suicide was not going to be an option because I had just seen my dad attempt it when I was 11. And I knew I wasn't going to put anybody through that. And I wasn't going to put myself through that. And, it looked, kind of painful. And at some point, though, I just kind of looked up and realized my friends from school weren't going through the same thing I was. I got to hang out with them enough to realize, hey, that guy's family, they're still together. This guy over here doesn't want to hang out with us during Christmas because he wants to go on something called a family vacation. What the heck? And then seeing how parents that were still together were interacting and showing love and affection for each other and showing that same love and affection for their kids. And it just made me realize there is a different way, and I don't have to follow this darker, gloomier path that my cousins and my uncles seem to be following. What if I drew a line in the sand and said, I'm going to be the first in my family to go to college. I'm going to be the first in my family to have even my own grandparents, though, they were married 50 plus years before they passed away. And I was like, I want to be like them,
Yeah.
whatever, my uncles did to get divorced, that clearly didn't work for them. So learn from their mistakes, find out what my grandparents are doing that works, find out what my friends' parents are doing that works, and just learn how to grow into that and be the father that my kids will need to be someday. And let's just break this cycle. So I think that would be the first rut I faced, was at a young age and drawing that line in the sand and just really being intentional as much as possible ever since.
Yeah, I love that. Couple of takeaways I had there, but I did talk when you mentioned about the rejection from the family and that, and how many of us have that, and I haven't heard anybody really put it that way, but I know what you mean about that. You're almost like the black sheep, right,
Mhm.
of the family and being in that position. And so, thank you for sharing that, because I think it's important that we recognize that how that story really rings true for a lot of us. And the other part, just to kudos to you to being able to come through and having to deal with a father attempting suicide, and you have such great positive energy today. And so it's obvious to me you've done a ton of work on who you are as a man, as an individual, and so you're solid in your place. And I think that's another great lesson that the folks that are listening to this podcast really start to take away from the type of individual that we're speaking with here today. Then Jerry, you're just phenomenal. So the last point that I had from that very piece, your opening piece there, was talking about being in the family vacation and how easy it is for us to change that story about. I can remember lots of my friends and even myself at some point. We get you get to a point where maybe dad isn't as cool as he used to be, and hanging out with your brothers and sisters isn't as cool as it used to be. But really, the family dynamic and having that close knit bond of a family, and seeing other members of your extended family being married for numerous decades, is truly what, when we talk about connection and being and getting yourself out of a rut. Like, what a life that they must be living to be able to have that kind of a bond to last as long as that.
Yeah, I think I was really blessed to, I think just be able to look up and look around.
Yeah.
I went through a lot of the same experiences these cousins of mine had, and we had similar friends in their circles. They had friends who also had healthy family dynamics, but I think they were just so caught up in the misery they were in that they didn't realize, what's outside of, what was that movie Pleasantville? Like, what's outside of Pleasantville? And I've been blessed to be able to look up and look around and say, like we had to stay in foster care for about a month or two. And this was also an eye opener. This is like right after my dad, uh, started getting treatment, because, eventually he got to a point where he couldn't hide it anymore. His coworkers, this is in the Army,
Yeah.
reported him, got him the help he needed. And then we stayed in foster care for about a month or two. and just seeing this family come together, they'd pray before every meal. The siblings, they would have disagreements, but they never fought. Like my brother and I, we fought. Like we would like push each other, punch, kick, bite, pull hair, pinch. I mean, you name it. We're trying to cause physical harm. And here are these three boys about the same age as us, and we were alien to them. But I mean, they fostered enough kids to kind of understand, but they themselves never got to that point, and that was alien to us. Like, wait, you don't fight? And they're like, oh yeah, we fight all the time. I'm like, no, seriously, you turn to your brother and said, hey, I was a little hurt by what you did, and then the brother apologized, and my brother and I are looking at them like, yeah, we don't do that. Like, we just fight it out. Whoever wins, that's who won the argument. And so just seeing that, that little taste there, that's different. And so I think I was just very blessed to be able to have, I guess, just somebody to help me notice that is happening around us, that there's hope. There's a brighter side to what's going on. There's always a silver lining somewhere and an opportunity in every hardship.
Absolutely. And just that story as well there, just to see the two different ways that they're fighting, but in a different way, right? And from the physical aspect of it, and that's how my brother and I were. I'm the oldest in my family. There's one that's my second oldest is 11 months younger than I am. Yeah, 11 months younger than I am. And I can tell you, like, we wore out my poor father in those first 6-7 years. Like, we just wore that man out. But we grew up with lots of competition, and I can totally relate to the fighting and that. It was almost to the death. And I say to this day that if I ever had to go into battle, he would be the one I would want beside me, because while we fought hard like that, I also knew it at a deep down level that that we truly loved each other. And although our family anyways had a really hard time expressing that, physically, like just through hugs, and even verbally, even to say the word. I don't think I remember. My father's no longer with us. I don't even think I ever remember him telling us that he loved us. But you just knew from the work that he did and everything. I'm sure it's similar for you in your scenario.
Yeah. My dad was very unlike my uncles, the ones that picked on me. He just had a rough season in his life. He got the healing that he needed, and but he was the kind of, he still is the kind of guy who would give you like the last $20 in his pocket. If you're hungry, he'd go get you a meal. If you were without a home and your family, he's taking you in. And just so I did learn a lot from my dad in like how to treat others and how to be fair. And then also I got to learn from his mistakes too, because as the years went by, you start to find out, as you're visiting mom, like, hey, what happened? And she starts to tell her side, and you get to see where, she fell for some lies, and you also get to see where she also felt insecure. And, what did my dad not do to help her, feed into those insecurities and eventually leave us? And then, getting to learn from my dad's perspective, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I see where he just had no clue how to show affection. And it led my mom to believe that, she wasn't loved. She was just the housekeeper. And so you learn like lessons like that over time. And so again, this started when I was 11. I'm like 46 now, had 35 years to kind of heal and learn and grow. And my wife would tell you I'm still learning. And she's like, why'd you do that? And I'm like, I don't know. I learned that from somewhere. And then we realized, oh yeah, my parents taught me that.
Right on. So in doing getting prepared for today, I noticed that you have something you call the 5 F's.
Yes.
How are these 5 F's connected, and how can we make use of them in our life?
Yeah. So ever since we started Beyond the Rut, I'll keep saying we because there were 3 of us originally, even though it's just me on the show and on the platform now. But for us to have a fulfilled life, to have contentment, to in a sense have balance, there are 5 areas of our lives we should look at, and that's our faith, our family, our fitness. That includes mental wellness. And even spiritual health, our finances, and then our outlook on future possibility. We gotta have a belief that things can get better, that they can grow, that we can make the world a better place, kind of make heaven here on earth in a sense. So those 5 F's, they're kind of connected as a circle. At the same time, they're in order of priority. So for us, our faith is the first thing. If all else fails, take a look at your faith walk. Are you spending time in prayer and in God's word on a regular basis? Are you taking time to meditate on that, to reflect on how your life is connecting to what you're reading? If you're struggling with something, are you looking at what would Jesus want this, want to have happen in this arena? Am I treating my wife like a child of God? Am I treating my children as children that God has entrusted in me? They're adults now, so I think we did okay. Neither of them went to prison, so
There
far.
you go.
So yeah, faith first and foremost, and then family, and then within family, my marriage relationship first and foremost above my own children.
Hmm.
And that used to hurt our kids' feelings initially because they're like, how could you not put us first? And we're like, well, seriously, you want to have safety, and you want that emotional safety, you want that financial safety and security, and you need to know that mom and dad are always on the same page. Even when we're not, we're going to get there before we work with you on anything. And that alone gave our kids a strong sense of family safety, emotional safety throughout their whole lives. And, it even served as an example for their friends, which was kind of cool. We didn't expect that. But, like my son, he's like a teenager and he says, "I love you, Dad." And I can hear as I'm walking away, his friends saying, "Did you just tell your dad you love him?" And he was like, "Yeah, so what?" And they're like, "I've never told my dad I love him, and I never heard it from him. And your dad said it back like it was no big deal." And my son, he's like, "Yeah, so?" Like to him, it was no big deal. It really wasn't. And so
Normal, right?
yeah, for them. And that's what we wanted ever since before my wife and I got married. That was the kind of environment we wanted for our kids. So that's family, the fitness part. So our physical health, our emotional health, even our spiritual health. So taking a look at that on a regular basis. Our finances. We don't have to make tons of money, but we have to manage what we have very well. So getting rid of debt, especially consumer debt, very big, very important, but also saving that nest egg for emergencies and investments for the future, like retirement. And then future possibility, what are we growing into? And, if any one of those areas are out of whack, it starts to impact the other areas. So marital problems tend to revolve around money issues, or money issues exacerbate family issues. And, fitness issues could lead to money problems, or maybe you're stressing about money problems. And so wherever you're feeling stuck in life somewhere, somehow, if you look at each of those 5 circles, it'll help you pinpoint what is going on in my life, and then which of these things is the root cause, and then how do I fix it? And what's the one thing I could do that could put everything else back into alignment?
Love that, and really like that framework of the just a little different take on the wheel of life concept. And what I really appreciate what you're saying is that, and is just the story about your children going, well, how come we're not first? And really understanding that when the chips are down, there needs to be something greater than who we are in order to help to rise, to lift us up over that challenge. And while family is so important, and it's not like it's God here and family is so far behind, but it's something has to be that protector, that overriding piece that helps bring stability for yourself and for the family. So I really like what you've done with that structure, and I'm sure you do a lot of great work within that in your programs. Let me ask about what do we do if we feel like we're stuck and we're in this rut? We've been sitting in it for a little while now. Do you have any words of advice, or how would you coach somebody if they were stuck in a rut and to get themselves out of it?
Kind of a 3-step journey in a sense. And I use this when I do leadership coaching as well. And that is, the first thing we got to do is look at what is happening. So we take a look at those 5 F's. What is going on in each of those circles? Not even like what's going on that's wrong, like just an inventory. What is happening right now? How's your faith walk going? How are things going on with the family? How are things going on with your fitness levels, your finances? And what are you working on to grow? And from that, it gives you a good assessment of what's going on in your life. And then, and from there, something will come up. We're working on a heavy project at work. I've been asked to work, 70 hours a week, no overtime or anything. It's just if we want to put food on the table. That's what we're expected to do. And so you get this work issue, which kind of falls in the finance circle. So the demands to earn that paycheck, the demands of that job are putting a strain on your health and your family life. And you're like, okay. So from there, you start to recognize that rut. In this example, it's extra hours at the workplace. So you can start to dig a little bit deeper. Is this a temporary thing, or is this more of a permanent fixture? What's going on that's causing these long hours at the office kind of thing? Is it my own personal drive? Am I avoiding something and working these long hours? So, it's recognizing that rut and really diving deep to know what's going on in that rut. The second phase is understanding where I want to be. So that is also, having an understanding in those 5 circles, those 5 F's. What do I want the ideal to be for my faith walk, my family, my fitness levels, finances, and future possibility? And then I start to recognize and see the gap. So there's where I am, there's where I really want to be, and it's that discord or that disconnect, that gap between the two that's causing the issue. So now, in understanding where I want to be, what is it I need to do differently? Do I need to get rid of something? Do I need to add something? Do I need to do something differently? What is it? And what is the expected outcome to get there? And once I've got that mapped out, is it something I need to do daily, weekly, monthly? So you're setting goals, micro goals, long-term goals, whatever they need to be. And then the third thing is you take action. So that having to spell out RUT, recognize the rut you're in, understand where you want to be, take action to get there. And then as you're taking action, you're measuring your progress. So I'm a big fan of journaling. Just had an episode this week with a guy named John Lee Dumas. We talked about journaling to help achieve your goals. And that helps you just see what your progress is like. So what are your measurables to know you're on the right track? If it's a fitness thing, is it walking so many miles? Is it going to the gym so many days, exercise so many days a week? If it's, in this particular case, we're talking about working late. Is it a timeline? A project needs to get done as soon as possible so that we can go back to normal? Or is it just intentionally checking out of work on time? And then, each day you do that, that's like a big check mark, and, kind of measure the impact of leaving that early. So there you have it. Yeah. I was like, is there more? No, that's pretty much it. RUT, take action and track the results.
I was going to say that's a great way of putting it together. I love that, with recognition, understanding, and then taking action. Makes the set plan simple yet still challenging, right? Because we're still forcing ourselves to look exactly at where we're at. And we kind of say it a little bit differently here at the Awakened Man. We talk about we need to be able. I know you're ready for change, or you'll know you're ready for change when you're ready to take responsibility for where you are in life, for who you are in life, and for whom you aspire to become. Very similar idea, right? And it all starts from that. When we can get there and get to that place, then we know we're on the right path and being able to correct some of the challenges that we're faced with.
Yeah. And a lot of times it helps to also think about what is at stake if nothing changes. So, if I do nothing differently and I keep working these long hours, what is that impact on my faith life, my family life, fitness, and so on? And when you start to predict the future in that way, you're like, oh no, this has to change. And then now you can start making predictions. If everything is fixed, what do I have at stake to gain as a result in these 5 areas? And then it helps give you that emotional drive, that why to push forward and get it done.
Absolutely. Nothing better, nothing more powerful than a strong why, totally, totally like that. Also, in looking and doing some work, I see that servant leadership is really a really powerful piece, and it happens to be one of our core 12 virtues that we practice here at the Awakened Man. So tell me a little bit about your concepts of servant leadership and how you use it to strengthen your marriage.
Yeah. So for me, servant leadership is essentially the way Jesus led. When you look at how he treated the 12 disciples, other than the times where he had to kind of chastise them and say, you have little faith, seriously, come on, you can walk on water, get out here. So there are those moments. So he's got to discipline them and teach them and so on. But then the thing that stands out also is that he did things like he would forgive them and he'd restore them. He would wash their feet. And So he made sure that he was never above them, even though for all intents and purposes, he was like
Yeah.
far superior to them because he's the son of God. He's part of that, Godship and the triune. And it's like, but here he is in human form, and he's getting on his knees and he's cleaning the dust off of people's feet. And my dad was that guy, still is that kind of guy that, he's never above you. He's never go get this for me. He's like, let me go do this for you kind of guy. When I joined the Army, big on servant leadership. A lot of people, you watch the movies and you think it's all about us yelling at each other, calling each other maggot and whatever the movies say. The reality though is that, there's the tough love moments, but the day-to-day stuff is, truly like making sure my soldiers go eat first. So I was a sergeant, every mealtime, especially like during lunch, during the regular, like non-deployment days.
Yeah.
Making sure my soldiers go off to have lunch first before I go take care of myself and go get my lunch. When we're on deployment, it was all 3 meals, hey, it's getting close to breakfast time. Have I made arrangements for my soldiers to go get food, and still perform our duties? So like if it's steak and lobster night, I'm not going to run off and get my own plate of lobster. I'm going to send my guys out to go get their steak and lobster while I hold down the fort for them. And so it's that kind of thing. It's making sure they get their mail. It's making sure they're getting paid the way they should. When they've done something worthy of promotion, you're putting them in for awards. You're putting them in for promotion. You're recognizing them when they do things well. You're course correcting them when they don't. And so that really stuck with me. So as I left the Army, I applied that to work. Your specific question though is how do you apply that to family life?
Yeah.
Same thing. And, I just had a conversation this morning about headship. Where do we tend to get headship wrong in marriage versus what does it look like in the context of servant leadership? And so we're talking about like me as the head in my family, there's that expectation that, I have to have the final say. I'm like, well, yeah, but if I'm a servant leader, I am going above and beyond to truly understand what it is my wife needs in that situation. So it's not just about like, I have one point of view, she has another. And since I'm the husband, she's got to submit to my point of view. Like I talked about it in terms of as a servant leader, I have a point of view. Hers is different. I'm now obligated as the servant leader to find out what is the difference. And is it something we can meet in the middle on? Is it something I can help her understand why we got to do it a certain way? Am I wrong? Because I could be. And having the patience and taking the time to understand what her perspective is a part of that servant leadership. What does my team say? What does my team notice? What do they experience? Because if you're truly leading a team, you are getting information from everybody and different perspectives. Then you make the best decision possible, not just the most convenient for yourself. Whew. So yeah, servant leadership.
You did a great job describing that. And that's so true, really, because the core piece with servant leadership is really about, and I interviewed a gentleman, he actually called it more observant leadership.
Oh, yeah.
And that's exactly what you're describing, is that, a true servant leader will take that time to observe and understand everything that's going on around them, and then make the best possible decision they can with the information that they have. It isn't about getting it and making a decision what's best for me, but what's best for we. And as we group, then we can raise the level of our relationships. And so I really like how you described that. It's just right on.
There was a time, probably about a decade ago. Let's see, it's 2023 now. Oh, a little over a decade. So we were living in Corpus Christi, Texas. I had a job offer to move to Houston, which is like 3.5 hours away. The pay increase was a good 60% higher than what I was earning currently, which, I wasn't earning much at the time. So the numbers were still not that big, but they were big. When you didn't make that much before, it was huge. And so the downside is you'd have to move to Houston, which has probably the worst traffic in the United States of America. And my wife and I both prayed about this. We got the job offer. I told her that this sounds great. The numbers sound great. I'm not too keen about the traffic in Houston. We'd have to find a new place to live. The cost of living is higher, all that stuff. And so we prayed about it. And the thing that my wife had on our heart, now what I had on my heart was, listen to your wife. Not do what she says, but listen to her. She's going to share with you what she needs. Listen to her, and you're going to serve your family's needs that way. And so I'm asking my wife, what do you think? Because I think she's just going to tell me the answer. Oh, well, we should stay or we should go. Her reply was, whatever you feel is best. I'm like, God, I don't think she got the message. I don't understand. What is this? Well, what I didn't know was that because she was also praying, what she had in her heart was trust your husband's judgment.
Mhm.
And so her response was, whatever you decide is best, I will go with it. And I'm sitting here like still praying to God, like, God, you put it on my heart. Listen to your wife. All she's saying is whatever I say. Like that's no answer. But truly listening to her, like as we're driving to go out for anything, we leave our neighborhood, we would pass a construction site of the new high school that was going to open. And every time we drove by that high school after this job offer, I had like a week to think about it. And every time we drove by to like go to my mother-in-law's house, to go to a restaurant, to go pick our kids up from their middle school and elementary school, every time we drove by that high school construction site, my wife would say something like, it'd be so exciting to see our daughter doing high school dance there. Drive back this way, back to home. Man, what do you think it's going to be like when Jacob graduates, our son graduates from that high school? And so she was imagining the future of our kids graduating. At first I thought she was just talking about high school in general. And then I realized the specificity, that specific high school, that our son would be the first graduating class that had gone through that high school in all 4 years. Our daughter would be right behind him 2 years later. And, listening to her say that, like truly listening to her, it was clear. She's dreaming about life here in Corpus Christi.
Yeah.
And she's dreaming about, and the only thing she's ever wanted to be is a stay-at-home mom. And if I move us to Houston, I am going to deprive her of this dream to raise her kids in this neighborhood, to have the kids go through the specific high school. Like she has it set in her mind and in her heart. And so in the end I said, I'm going to pass on the job. And she was like, well, how come? And I said, well, thinking about it, in Houston, it's going to be a higher cost of living. Traffic's going to suck. We're going to, it's going to be like a 1 to 1.5 hour commute. That alone is going to suck. And I don't want it. But here's the thing I keep hearing when we drive by that high school. And I told her, and she goes, yeah, I really don't want to go. And I was like, well, why did you keep saying whatever you want to do? And then that's when she told me what she had on her heart. I'm like, oh, okay. But that was probably a very defining moment in our marriage. I mean, we'd probably been married at that point 10, 12 years, somewhere in there. And, just it really galvanized the trust we had in each other, in our faith walk. And I still love telling that story because it's like, what's the answer? And it's like, oh, that's listening. It's like, you don't always get the direct information. You sometimes got to listen to like what's being said and the context it's being said in, I think.
Absolutely. And, my takeaway from listening to that story is, the patience, that the two of you had, and especially yourself, because how many times would either spouse in lots of different situations where whatever you want, dear, or whatever you want, hon.
Yeah.
And but truly in our hearts, we want a different outcome, but we don't want to be that, to make that choice just yet. And so it allowed time for that to percolate and really settle in, to be sure, probably even for your wife as well, as that time frame passed, right? And had the decision been made sooner than that, it may have the outcome for yourselves could have been far more different. And I think that's just the epitome of truly what servant leadership is. It doesn't mean making decisions mean that you have to make that right away just because you think you have all the information. There's time for it to marinate, and that's a big decision, to pack up a family and move. Like I know my father had to struggle and do that with us when we were young, just as I was going into high school, and and I couldn't imagine being in that position. I haven't had to make that call in my raising my family, so it's definitely a nerve-wracking decision, because it totally changes the dynamic of the family for sure.
Yeah. And there's so many folks out there that'll jump on an opportunity like that. Like it's a 60% pay raise. It's in the big city. It's gonna be great. It's a title that we never had before, and to get there and realize it's putting a bigger strain on the family than it was supposed to. And we actually came across that 3 years ago. I moved up to Dallas to kind of pave the way for empty nesting. You know, I was offered a job that was a movement up on the corporate ladder, big pay jump. But it went against everything I just told you about, you know, like family being together and raising ourselves together as a family. And we had to weigh that one, my wife and I both. And it was a really good opportunity. And we worked it out. We had a plan. Like, I'm not just going to go and be this guy that works and has this cool title and makes this paycheck if it's going to cost me my family. And so things that we had agreed on was a commuting schedule, because you know, Dallas from Corpus is about 7 hours apart if you drive. And so we worked out a commuting schedule and how that's going to alternate and where we'll meet up in the middle, because our son was leaving for college. So we were already dwindling down. And I had just promised my daughter she can graduate from her high school. I was like, well played, little girl. She knew I was getting that job. She actually said she knew I was going to get that job. So there was that commute, and our daughter, she did graduate from college or high school, and she was going off to college. But she didn't get into housing, and it was just sort of this like turning point where my wife thought she's got to be there for our daughter. And so we had to like really talk it through. We're like, look, I didn't come up here to be apart from you. I came up here to kind of pave the way for us to be empty nesters. I'd really rather you have you come up here. Our daughter's gonna be fine. She's 18. We raised her well, and I mean, she's our baby girl though. Like it pained me to say it. Like I was like, she's got to know I love her. She's my favorite daughter. You know, 'cause I only have one daughter, but and I'm like, she'll be okay. She's got a support system down there. You know, grandma's down there. Her brother still lives in that town. She's got friends at the school. She will be okay as long as we keep paying that rent for that dorm room she's in.
Yeah.
If we stop, then, you know, she's got to live with grandma and she'll be mad at us. She'll be fine. You know, come on up. And so it was a big leap of faith for my wife.
Yeah.
She didn't want to at first because, again, we're leaving our baby. And she came up within 2 weeks. She was like, what daughter? Just in case my daughter hears this. No, gotcha.
Yeah.
But I mean, the thing was, like, the arrangement was always, I had the willingness to quit my job, give up the apartment, and go back to Corpus Christi if
Yes.
it came down to losing the family. And that was something that blew my boss's mind like you wouldn't believe. Like, he always thought that he had that leverage. Like, this guy, he wants the job, he wants the money. And I'm like, no, if I'm feeling family strain, I will give up this job. I will break my lease and I'll go home. And he's like, what will you do? Deliver pizzas. I mean, we're getting rid of our debt, and we don't have to worry about how much money comes in. And that's the beauty of financial freedom. And he's like, huh. And so that was always something for us, was that if it was going to cost us the most important relationships we have, it's not worth having. And so that was, yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And that really leads into the next thing I want to talk about, and that's about how, as you know, especially for men, that we have these milestones, these ideas these things that we want to achieve in our life, and whether that's you're talking about getting a pay raise or promotion, climbing the proverbial corporate ladder, whatever that piece is, but it's always something that is it's outside of ourselves, and ultimately it doesn't necessarily bring us happiness. So why do you think that? Why is it that you think that we do that, and why is it that we chase these external things in our lives?
Yeah, I think a big part of that is just the culture we're in. If we're in the United States of America or North America, there is this big drive for individual achievement. That your success, your worth as a man is based on how much money you make, what kind of car you drive, what kind of house you have, what kind of title you have in your job. So like work status symbols, these are the things that define a man on a superficial level in our culture. And the thing that can ground us is our faith in God and knowing whose we are, as opposed to what we have.
Yeah.
And I think when we start putting the focus on the goal of, in my case now, to be a business owner, if that becomes more important to me than Jesus Christ, then I'm going to find that dissatisfaction.
Yeah.
If my career became more important than Jesus Christ, going to have some dissatisfaction. Amount of income, any of these things. If I put those ahead of, I become an idolater. Is that the word? Becomes an idol. There we go. Go with simple words, Jerry. You got this. And so I think that's the big thing there is if we put our focus on any one of these things more than our connection with God, then we're going to find that disconnect. We're going to find that dissatisfaction. And it doesn't matter what you pursue. It's never going to be enough because it's never going to fill that. I've heard people say like we were built or created with this gap inside our hearts. And the only thing that could fill that gap is God. And we need Jesus to bridge that gap for us. And once I understood that, I was like, oh yeah. And, a lot of my coworkers, a lot of my friends if they know me, yeah, they know I'm driven, but at the same time, they're often, I guess, blown away when I'm just kind of like, huh, no big deal. Oh, that fell apart. Well, let's fix it. It'll be fine. When the pandemic broke out, people were panicking, and I'm like, okay, so we got to keep our distance, wash our hands. Masks are encouraged. What kind of masks? Okay, do we have masks? Okay, let's go get masks. And my coworkers are like, how are you not freaking out? I'm like, well, one, nobody's shooting at me. And they're like, oh yeah, combat veteran. And I'm like, yeah. And besides, I know, we're being provided the things we need as far as information and resources. The things we need are available. We're actually blessed. I'm more concerned about, the areas of the world that don't have these resources. And, I'm also, just kind of worried that, is my family going to be okay? So I'm talking with them, and because of that connection, I know they're taken care of. We're going to be fine. And so it was just, again, that surrender to God. Like, hey, God, you've got this. Keep my eyes open. What do I need to do on my end to help whoever needs to be helped? And not realizing that was having an encouraging impact on the people who worked with me.
Nice. It's amazing, right? When you think about, and just in lots of aspects, where we're speaking about, and through a work perspective, that you don't really know the impact that you're making on people until they let you in, and you're just being you.
Yeah.
It's just part of you. It's not a game you're playing. It's not a facade. It's just, when it's truly authentic, it's just easy for it to happen, and then folks experience it. That's what makes it so mind blowing, because of the authenticity, right?
Yes. And I was just, I just now started thinking about it because you mentioned it, like treating people the way that Christ would want to treat people and would actually treat people without any ulterior motive, to me is like the greatest way to live, because there is no manipulation. There is no, I'm going to do this, therefore this person will feel compelled to do this for me. There's no Game of Thrones stress about it. It's like Jesus healed 10 people and only one said thank you. He still would heal the same 10 people. He'd heal another 10 people. It was never about people saying thank you to him or praising him. In fact, if anything, he'd be like, hey, don't tell anybody I just did that for you. Okay, you got it. And then they take off and tell everybody. It's like, I just told that guy not to do that. So it's just like that, again, that servant leadership thing. It's doing what needs to be done for the people who need it. And it's not about the recognition you get in return or how much money you make off of them. I know in the economies we live in that, you've got to earn a living, but treating people well, treating them with respect, I think,
Yes.
all that stuff. And I just love living that way.
Love it. Absolutely. I just want to go back a little bit. We were talking a little bit about your marriage and some of the decisions you're making, and then you used a word there about submission. And I want to just literally pick up on that a little bit and talk and dive into the idea on what you're meaning by submission in marriage, because I think if depending on how we've interpreted that word, it could really put our spouse in a rut
Yeah.
if they're not told, if we as men are not coming from the right place with the proper understanding of it, and then for them to experience it in the way that it's intended. So share your thoughts on what you
Oh,
mean
yeah.
by submission.
Well, it's not the "go make me a sandwich, woman" kind of submission. I even the conversation I had this morning, like seeing two men talk about submission and skirting around the conversation. Like we were like, this came up. Who gets to talk about it? And I'm like, well, you're the pastor. It's on you. And he's like, what? You're the host. And I'm like, whatever. So that happened this morning, and I left my studio and told my wife about the conversation, and she's like, "I suppose you want me to make you a sandwich now?" I'm like, "That was a joke. You weren't even in the room." So that joking aside, um, it's more of like a role within a biblical marriage in a sense. I think this is the best way he and I described it. It's not about me being better than my wife, because in actuality, my wife and I are equal.
Mm-hmm.
In value, to the eyes of God, we are both equal. You know, she is as much a child of God as I am. And, for me to do anything abusive towards her, I'm also abusing a child of God. And that's something I'll have to answer to. So there's that. There's the equality, but then, the headship piece is more of a responsibility and duty on my part to encourage my family to go to church, to encourage my family to know God, to meet the needs of my family, to listen to my family and help make a decision that's best for, as you said, we, not me. And so the submission side of it, in my view, and what I've picked up over the years through different marriage ministries and at conferences, is that if I'm doing my part to be the head of my family, leading Christ-like as a servant leader, my wife's submission is more of a response than an obligation. And so once I learned that, I was like, oh, so this headship thing's like a presidency, but I'm up for re-election every single night and every single day. And somebody was like, yeah, that's kind of it. I'm like, cool, got it. So it kind of puts that onus back on me. I've got to lead in a way that it makes it easier for my wife to respond with submission as opposed to feel obligated towards it. And I think that's one way that helped us understand that. The other thing was that the thing? Submission? More of a response. Yeah, so it's not my role to go and demand it from my wife, that kind of thing. But I remember, though, like when my wife first learned about submission, she learned about it before I did, because I was not a Christian when we first got married. I was stubborn and bullheaded. I think we were married 2 years before I finally received Jesus as my Savior. Mm-hmm. And that was a year after she prayed for my salvation, like, because I was off in combat. Apparently I made a deal with God. I didn't realize it at the time, but now that I've been a Christian for a few years, it's like, oh, wow, how about that? He totally took that as a deal. Well played, sir. Well played. So my deal with God was, Mr. Agnostic, atheist, was, the day that we're about to invade Iraq. I've kind of already written my letter home. I think I mailed it. Pretty sure I mailed it. I gave it to somebody to mail it off. But it was kind of like my farewell letter. Like, if I die, but I never used any words like that because I didn't want to freak my family out. But I wanted them to know I love you and I was thinking about you before I died. But I never said the words before I die. And then so I sent that off. I knew that base was covered. I was prepped, ready for war. And I thought, have I covered all my bases? And just in case, I said, God, if you're real, you're going to replace me with somebody who's going to love my wife better than I did. And you're going to raise, that guy's going to raise my children as if they were his own. That's it. Amen or something. That was my prayer. Meanwhile, my wife is in Texas and she's praying, dear God, please bring him back in one piece. And if you do, I promise you, I will bring him into church and it's up to you after that. But please bring him home in one piece. And so there's my wife making a true deal with God. I'm expecting to get killed because I was a medic and we have the highest percentage of posthumously awarded medals than any other job in the Army.
Wow.
And I was the guy who was always getting killed in training exercises. So I'm like, oh, I am dead meat. Like, I am toast. And we're an artillery unit, so we don't shoot bullets. We shoot artillery at each other. I'm dead. I'm not making it. Excuse me. So I was not making it. I thought I was not making it home. Well, we do the invasion. June comes around, July comes around, they pull us out of Iraq, and they're like, hey, we're sending you guys home. And, by early August, late July, I'm in Georgia again. And I'm in my wife's arms, and I'm like, I didn't die. Neat. Then my wife tells me on the drive home, she made the deal with God. And I'm like, well, I guess if you made the promise, you made the promise. And a year after that's when I received Jesus as my Savior. I was already out of the Army. And I'd say, what's the math on this? So that was like 2005. I received Jesus, and I was leading that men's group around 2010, give or take a year. That's when I realized that whole thing in Romans about, you're made a new creation in Christ. And I was like, you son of a gun. Son of a gun. But the thought was there, like the emotion was there. I'm like, loophole, you made me my own replacement. Well played. So that when I say well played, that's what I mean. I forgot what got me on that tangent, but it was fun to tell the story.
No, it was awesome. Just love that. Jerry, we've had spent so much great time here today, but if there is something maybe we haven't spoken about today, I think you wanted to leave a message for our listeners, or one takeaway, what would that takeaway be for them today?
Oh man, I would say our life here on this earth is just way too short to live it stuck in a rut. And on top of that, if we're truly worshiping a God who's abundant, who restores us and reconnects us to Him, then it's up to us to live intentionally as well. And so it's really important to think about life. If you're to live it for God, what would that look like? Where would the surrender be? Where would the intentionality be? And think about it in the areas of your faith, your family, your fitness, finances, and future possibility.
Love it. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for spending time with me today. And you did totally give us a path, really a way for us to get out of our ruts in our lives if we're truly choosing to do that. And what a much better life we can live when we have our priorities set up straight. Now, if men wanted to get a hold of you and reach out to you and join one of your programs, what would be the best way for them to do that?
Best thing would be to go to my website, beyondtherut.com, and there's my podcast. I have blog posts there. If you want to map out your life with goals, beyondtherut.com/goals, and that'll get you on my mailing list, as well as give you a workbook to work that process through. And it's coming up this week, maybe next week. My company's website, btrimpact.com. So if you want me to speak at your company or with your work team, do a workshop for you, or help you develop a servant leadership program or culture in your company, then that's available as well.
Lovely. Well, I'll make sure all that information is in the show notes, as well as any of your social contacts, so people can get a chance to get out and reach out to you. Just want to say once again, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Man, my pleasure, Alan. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Revolutionary Man podcast. Are you ready to own your destiny? To become more the man you are destined to be? Join the brotherhood that is The Awakened Man at theawakenedman.net and start forging a new destiny today.